Right now, you're probably warm, right? And you didn't even have to try. The heat just runs. You've got a winter coat by the door you definitely didn't craft yourself, and a fridge full of food that's going to be there next week no matter what the weather's doing outside. Well, welcome to this explainer, where we're going to strip every single bit of that away. Picture this: no house, no modern heater, no refrigerator, just your bare skin and a winter so brutal it could literally end your life in your sleep before you even woke up.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It's actually terrifying. For hundreds of thousands of years, that Ice Age reality on the right, that was normal. Our ancestors didn't have thick fur. They didn't have blubber like a seal. Fundamentally, we're soft, hairless animals that originally evolved in the African heat. Yet somehow, we were thrust into these instant death conditions where making it to spring was absolutely never guaranteed. Every single one of your ancestors won a fight against winter that they literally couldn't afford to lose. So let's look at exactly how they engineered their survival.
To do that, we're going to treat this explainer like an ancient engineering blueprint. We'll be covering the ultimate engineering problem, the basic survival toolkit, architecture of the giants, engineering the cold trap, stockpiling for the freeze, and finally, winning the winter war.
Okay, starting with Section 1, the ultimate engineering problem, a soft animal in a frozen world.
So 26,000 to 19,000. That right there is how many years ago the last ice age hit its absolute worst peak. We're talking massive sheets of ice sitting heavy right on top of Europe, Asia, and North America. The landscape was flat, treeless, and just frozen solid. Out in the open terrain, there was absolutely nothing to stop a freezing wind, a wind that could kill an unprotected human in a matter of hours. On paper, we absolutely should have been the first things to go extinct. A hairless ape in a blizzard. But you know, we had a brain that could plan and hands that could build.
Which brings us to Section 2, the basic survival toolkit: sewing, smearing, and seeing.
Let's dive right into what is arguably the ultimate game changer, this sewing needle. Invented roughly 30,000 years ago, it's really just this tiny piece of bone or ivory with a little hole in it. But some scientists literally call this the most important invention in human history. Why? Well, think about it. Draping a loose bearskin over your shoulders, that leaks heat through every single gap. The needle meant humans could sew fitted, totally sealed winter clothes, complete with layered sleeves that closed up securely at the wrist. And they didn't stop there. Hunters would actually smear animal fat, tallow, straight onto their faces and necks to completely seal their skin against the biting wind. Plus, to avoid going snowblind from the glaring ice, they carved these thin little slits into pieces of bone and tied them over their eyes. Basically, the world's very first sunglasses.
Moving on to Section 3, architecture of the giants, the mammoth bone blueprint.
You know, we really need to forget that old myth that everyone was just hiding out in deep caves. Out on the desolate, frozen plains of Ukraine and Russia, there were no caves. There was barely even any wood. So around 18,000 years ago, right in the absolute deadliest part of the Ice Age, humans turned to literally the only building material lying around: mammoths. At a place called the Measure Site, archaeologists actually found single-family homes constructed almost entirely from the remains of these absolute giants.
And this is where you really see the sheer genius of ancient human engineering. Listen to how they actually built these things step by step. Step 1, they sank massive mammoth skulls and incredibly thick leg bones straight into the frozen earth. That gave them a completely unmovable, super heavy foundation. Step 2, they took these massive ribs and curved tusks and interlocked them upward, weaving the whole thing into this really strong, dome-like frame. Then, Step 3, they packed that entire skeletal structure with animal hides, earth, and moss. We're talking hundreds of bones used to make just one single house. They literally built weatherproof fortresses out of giant skeletons. How wild is that?
That leads us right into Section 4, engineering the cold trap, applied Ice Age thermodynamics.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. We have to talk about how they applied advanced thermodynamics tens of thousands of years before it was ever written down as a science. Many of these mammoth winter homes featured what's called a cold trap doorway. They purposefully dug the doorway lower than the main sleeping area inside. It's brilliant because cold air is dense, right? It's heavy. So it would sink down into this dugout entrance trap and just sit there. Meanwhile, all that lighter, warm air from their fires and their own body heat naturally rose up to the elevated platforms where the family actually slept. It's just a brilliantly simple, totally life-saving manipulation of airflow. And they backed up that internal heating with some seriously brilliant external insulation. For instance, piling thick banks of snow against a wall might sound counterintuitive, but snow actually traps heat. It kept the inside close to freezing even when it was dropping to 30 degrees below zero outside. They also built near trees whenever they could, using the forest as a natural windbreak to cut down that deadly wind chill.
And as for any tiny little gaps left over, they caulk them up completely tight using mud, moss, and pine pitch, which is like a sticky tree sap. Absolutely no drafts allowed.
Next up, Section 5, stockpiling for the freeze, defeating the slower killer.
See, the cold wasn't the only enemy. For months at a time, there was absolutely nothing to gather, and hunting was incredibly scarce. Starvation was the slower killer, so they had to become absolute masters of off-grid food logistics. They cured meat by smoking and drying it out into jerky that would last forever without spoiling. They dug underground cellars to keep their gathered food completely safe from scavenging animals. And in a total stroke of genius, they actually took massive cuts of mammoth meat, weighed them down, and sank them right into freezing ponds. It acted as a completely natural, fail-proof refrigerator that used zero electricity and could never break down in a winter storm. Literally not a single calorie was wasted. Every part of the animal was used. Their entire year was built around just prepping for winter.
And finally, Section 6, winning the Winter War, extreme biology, and the final twist.
Make no mistake, trying to live alone during the Ice Age was effectively a death sentence. If you were isolated, you were the first to die when a cold snap hit. So shelters were packed tightly, purposely sharing body heat. But human biology actually adapted too. Take the Yagan people down at the very southern tip of South America. They survived freezing conditions with almost no clothes. How? By biologically running higher internal body temperatures and resting in this deep squat to tuck their limbs in and conserve heat. And later on in history, people even turned animals into living furnaces. They'd bring cows and sheep into the bottom floors of their homes so the rising animal heat would actually warm the family living directly above them.
But all of this brings us to a massive, totally jarring scientific mystery. Did early humans hibernate? Well, at a Spanish archaeological site known as the Pit of Bones, a site dating back an astonishing 430,000 years, by the way, scientists found something truly shocking.
The ancient remains of teenagers found there show this really strange, cyclical, seasonal bone damage and interrupted growth. Basically, it implies they were going for really long periods without sun or proper nutrients. And the wild part? This is the exact same pattern we see in animals that hibernate, when a body just slows way, way down to survive a brutal winter on absolutely zero food. Now, to be fair, this theory is still fiercely debated in the scientific community today, but it does suggest that some ancient humans might have literally slowed their bodies down into a deep sleep, just waiting out the starvation hidden away in deep caves.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. We beat winter so completely that most people forgot it was ever a war we were losing. Think about that. In just a few thousand years, we've gone from stacking mammoth skulls into windbreaks and praying our bodies wouldn't shut down in the night, to literally just tapping a digital screen to heat up our entire house. The deadliest, most terrifying force our ancestors ever faced is now just something we mildly complain about when we're walking to our cars. I really hope this explainer leaves you looking at your modern heater, your insulated coat, and that full refrigerator with a profound new sense of awe and a whole lot of gratitude.